The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Top Tactics to Improve Email Relevancy and Deliverability, sponsored by Return Path. My name is Justin Bridigan. I'm with Marketing Sherpa, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. Before we begin today, we do have some housekeeping information and introductions. So with that, we'll introduce our three great presenters that we have today. Our first is Sergio Bolaño, the Director of Research at Marketing Sherpa and NECLAB's Primary Research. Now, he's the lead author of the soon-to-be-released 2011 Email Marketing Benchmark Report. He researches, writes, and frequently speaks about these topics at Marketing Sherpa summits, workshops, conferences, and training events. He also has done some educational institutions, including Harvard as well. Our next speaker is Jeffrey Rice. He is a research analyst at Marketing Sherpa, focusing on email marketing. He is a contributing author of the soon-to-be-released 2011 Benchmark Report, and the lead author for the 2011 Email Handbook and the Marketing Sherpa e-newsletter columnist. Now, Tom Sather is a Director of Professional Services for Return Path, where he works with top brand clients like eBay, MySpace, IBM, and Twitter. Tom's previous experience includes stints with email service providers, Experian, and he works on the abuse desk for AOL, Bell South, AT&T, and GTE. Now, Tom, he uses his knowledge to advise marketers on how to get their email delivered to the inbox and generate the highest possible response. Now, we invite everyone today, and we encourage you to join the conversation on Twitter. We are at #email2011. We will be monitoring those for questions, and we appreciate any insight that you give us as the webinar is progressing. Now, also remember, you can use the GoToWebinar question box feature to ask your questions. And so we'll be monitoring those as well. Keep in mind that we will have a 10-minute Q&A session after the presentation has concluded. Also, this slide presentation will be recorded and sent to you tomorrow in a follow-up email, and also will be available by our e-newsletters as well. So with that, I will go ahead and turn the time over to Sergio to begin our presentation.
Thank you very much, Justin. One point that we also want to make is that today's presentation, today's slide presentation, is going to be distributed after the webinar through Marketing Sherpa, and you'll be able to take the presentation and review, have it for review later. In today's agenda, we're going to do a quick overview of some of the email marketing research for the benchmark study that Jeff Rice and I are currently working on for 2011. And we're going to talk about some top challenges that are facing email marketers today. And the two primary points that we're going to talk about are relevancy and deliverability. And not only how to improve these, but how you can improve on one to improve the other. We're also going to talk about how marketers are improving deliverability using relevance as a catalyst, and what you can do to improve email success metrics. Jeff Rice is going to present a case study on relevancy, and Tom Sather from Return Path is going to be presenting the second half of the webinar on his information. So to give you a quick peek at what's coming up very shortly in our 2011 Email Marketing Benchmark Report, we did a study. It's our 8th annual study, and it included more than 1,100 email marketers to give us what works and what works and what doesn't for them. The study includes about 150 charts and more than several hundred marketer insights, which we're going to provide to you in the form of a few comments today, some of the highlights from the marketer insights. This new research is focusing on accelerating email performance. And while accelerating email performance may sound fairly generic, it really does apply to email marketing today in terms of how mature email marketing has become. It's not like a new tactic like social media where your improvement steps can be very large. You can take quantum leaps in performance improvement with a new tactic because best practices aren't as well established, and people are learning something new and dramatic every day. With something as mature as email marketing, the improvements are incremental. And what we found was that if you use the right improvement tactics and combine them, you can accelerate performance and get more than minor incremental steps. You can get major steps in improvement going forward. Some of the things that are unique to this year's benchmark research on email marketing, we did something that we started doing a year ago with social media marketing benchmark data. And what we did was we segmented the data through the interviews that we conducted with email marketers by organizations in each stage of email marketing maturity. In the strategic phase, which is the highest level, the most advanced level, we're able to break out what those marketers are doing and compare them to what marketers in the earlier stages, the transition and the trial stage, were doing to show what the disparity is in success of the outcomes of email programs for each phase of marketing. We also took a three-dimensional view of most of the email tactics so that you could not only look at one data set, but we combined three data sets on effectiveness, degree of difficulty, and usage of email tactics to give you a view of the data that you just haven't seen before. We've also got all new metrics and benchmarking data that companies use to compare how they're performing compared with others in the industry. So let's get started with some of the research. What we usually start with is a view of what challenges email marketers are facing. And what's happening again in 2011 is that relevancy is the most significant challenge for email marketers. And as this chart shows, about 2/3 or 65% of email marketers told us that targeting recipients with highly relevant content is a very significant challenge going forward. Another 39% say that improving deliverability is a very significant challenge. And as I mentioned, what we're going to show you today is how to improve relevancy to improve deliverability. So basically, you're killing two birds with one stone by improving your relevancy tactics. Let's start by agreeing on what relevancy is. Quite simply, relevancy is sending the right message to the right person at the right time. And as this little illustration shows, relevancy is that space between what you want to say and what they're interested in. If they're the same, if what you're saying is what they're interested in, that's relevant content. And the reason that relevancy is so important today is subscribers have become truly inundated with email. They're receiving messaging from all directions, so they've become more selective in what they want to open and what they want to read. And in fact, about half of email marketers are still blasting email subscribers with irrelevant messages, even though we've learned that the #1 reason subscribers are unsubscribing from their newsletters and other opt-in email is irrelevancy. Irrelevancy is also why email is not delivered, and that's something we're going to address today as well. So this is one of the three-dimensional views of tactics that I was talking about earlier, and this is on relevancy. And if you look at this chart, what you see is that the spheres represent different tactics used to improve relevancy, things like automatically sending emails based on triggers to segmenting email campaigns based on sales cycles. And where these spheres reside on this chart, the further they are up on this chart, the higher the level of effectiveness of these tactics based on what email marketers tell us. The further to the right these spheres reside, the more difficult it is to implement these tactics. And as a group, if you look at this cluster of tactics, what you see is that it's the degree of difficulty. Most of these tactics are further to the right on the screen, so it's the high degree of difficulty to implement these relevancy tactics that make them such a significant challenge. And there are two factors within that impact relevancy most. And first, relevancy requires segmentation. And secondly, relevancy requires content. Both of these are challenges within themselves. And the quotes with these bullets are from marketers. So for segmentation, what one marketer told us is that the most difficult issue they're facing is tracking a complex set of users with different needs so we can effectively deliver targeted content. In terms of the content itself, another marketer told us, should we be content creators or aggregators? There's no time for executives to write down their thoughts, so it's very difficult for us to position them as thought leaders. And it's hard for ghostwriters to fake that. So part of the problem or the solution using segmentation is personalization. And what this chart is showing us is what information organizations are collecting from subscribers for personalization. And this particular chart is broken down by email marketing maturity. So if you look at the top set of bars, it represents the tracked behavior and activity, purchases and views, for example, that users are or that marketers are experiencing. And what you see here is that more than twice as many organizations in the strategic phase are collecting and using tracked behavior and activity information than marketers in the trial phase. And as I said before, the reason for trying to get to that strategic phase, which is represented by the pink bar, is because strategic marketers tend to be much more effective. So for trial phase marketers to reach that strategic phase, they've got to start tracking behavior and activity more often. While tracking behavior and activity is sort of an automated tracking method, in other words, you can use Google Analytics or some other analytics to figure out where people are going and what people are doing on your website as a result of clicking on your email. There are other segments of data like volunteered content purposes. Those are things that are usually obtained through preference centers, where a subscriber is able to tell you what topics they want or what news and promotional information they want to receive. So using segmentation for content personalization, you've got to have this data in your database. And this is basically the personal information that's coming from the user themselves. And this data is used to personalize email, and it goes beyond subscriber information. While a personal name is something that 81% of organizations are collecting, far fewer are collecting things like the address or the phone number or the demographic information. And the more information you collect, the more difficult it is to manage and use this segmentation data in order to create messaging or deliver content of interest to subscribers. But those of you who are looking at this now and saying, you know, we don't have very much data, so how can we still segment our information for our messaging for personalization? Well, there is information there. Use what you've got. There are things like if you go into your database, your opt-in database, and you looked at the date that a subscriber registered, for example, you can use that date in your efforts to ID and reactivate inactive subscribers. So now I'm going to hand it off to Jeff Rice, who's going to discuss a case study on relevancy through personalization. Jeff, it's all yours.
Hey, thank you, Sergio. Good morning to those on the West Coast and good afternoon to those on the East Coast. I'd like to share a case study from the Marketing Sherpa archives that really touches on what Sergio just said about using existing data that you have and just tweaking your email campaigns to improve them. It's a great story of how creating relevancy through personalization at every touch point you have with your customer. It starts with a company named Isabella. It's a health and wellness retail company. And they've been moving from printed catalogs to an e-commerce business model as their customers' preference changed. Isabella spent a year adding personalized product recommendations to their website, including their product and shopping cart pages. They also added recommendations to their weekly email reports. So they had some success. The results weren't surprising. Isabella learned that the recommendations lifted their site conversion rate to 6.2% from 5.6% from same quarter year over year when they didn't have recommendations. In addition, the team found 7.8% of the people who clicked through to visit the site from their weekly alert emails purchased a product. Not bad. So they had a challenge. Obviously, the team was happy with the results, but the next question was, where else could they use product recommendations to increase sales? Isabella thought that their order confirmation emails would be a great fit. An order confirmation or bill statements or passwords are examples of transactional or service-related emails. There's some key benefits. The customers, number one, expect to receive an order confirmation. Marketing Sherpa's research shows that transactional emails are opened at a 36% higher rate than regular old opt-in emails. Also, by adding product recommendation, they encouraged repeat sales from some of their best customers. And of course, as they captured more data, that only made their product recommendations better for the entire system. Just a side note, after this presentation, if you're thinking of adding offers to your transactional emails, I recommend referring back to the US CAN-SPAM Act and your legal department. The FTC defines a transactional email as one that facilitates an agreed-upon transaction or updates a customer in the existing business relationship. It cannot, of course, contain false or misleading routing information, but is otherwise exempt from most provisions in the CAN-SPAM Act. So, the next step, of course, is to execute. They need to do three things. The first two, they already had in place. They established and tested a recommendation system. The third was to redesign the order confirmation email to include HTML. As you can see, they made it a bit more appealing to the eye, adding a header, thank you message, and product recommendation on the right-hand side. The one thing I'd recommend is that when you're adding extra information, it's key that you maintain the customer's expectation of an order confirmation email. Notice 75% of this email is dedicated to the transaction, including the web confirmation number, products purchased, shipping information, and the order total. Again, the transaction information is located in the top left and is given greater importance than the product recommendations that are to the far right. So, the results. 400 to 500 customers per month click the recommendations in the confirmation emails, which is great. 19% of those who do click a recommendation complete a purchase. And that means that the recommendations in transaction emails generate 111% higher conversion rate among those who just click the recommendations that they see in the team's weekly alert emails. Overall, the total revenue generated from the team's recommendation engine equaled 90% of the total revenue the team generated through Google AdWords. So they were quite happy. Thanks for letting me share this case study with you. I'll turn it back over to Sergio.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. If I have the controls here, we'll move forward. Okay, great. Now, the data, the research that I shared with you before Jeff's case study related to relevancy. But now I want to take you through just a couple of data points on how relevancy translates into deliverability, and particularly how it translates into improving deliverability. And on this page, these 4 bullets, they represent a sequence of events that show you how relevancy translates into improved deliverability. If you look at it this way, relevant content boosts activity, meaning it's going to increase the open and click rates of your recipients. These increased open and click rates improve sender reputation. Improved sender reputation reduces false positive spam detection, and reduced spam detection increases email deliverability. So you can see how that transition goes from basically human reaction, improving open and click rates, to automated detection, where these open and click rates are translated into improved sender reputation by the automation systems, which also lower the number of spam emails that are detected. And overall, that improves your email deliverability. These are some trends in deliverability, and as the headline says, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. While improvements on a net basis are generally higher than the worsening of measurability or measurably worsening trends in deliverability, there is an offset, so it really isn't that much of an overall improvement. And what you're looking at here in terms of the chart is which factors in deliverability, like bounce backs and undeliverable email, missing rate, inbox placement rate, which ones of those are improving versus worsening in terms of what marketers told us. And we break this down two ways. If you look at improving as those organizations whose email campaigns are making it into the inbox, what marketers were telling us when we asked for their comments on this, the responses we got were, as an example, strict adherence to the Canned Spam Act and constant purging of inactive subscribers has helped significantly. We had a lot of responses that are similar to that, as well as covering a number of other areas for improving inbox deliverability. But for those organizations where their email campaigns weren't making it into the inbox, we heard things like junk folders and spam filters are getting more aggressive, and we're seeing a slight rise in soft bounces that never seem to really arrive. Those are some of the issues that organizations like ReturnPath deal with and allow you to improve the campaigns from their perspective. We also took a three-dimensional view of deliverability tactics, and basically what this one showed us when we looked at it from a three-dimensional perspective is that fast and easy often trumps effectiveness. Maybe it's because we're a little bit lazy, but it just seems like when we're looking at these tactics, the ones that were determined to be easier to implement, have a lower degree of difficulty, were also the ones that were used more often, or in this case, the largest spheres on here. Once again, what you're looking at here is the size of the sphere represents the percentage of organizations using these deliverability tactics. The higher up the sphere is, the higher the level of effectiveness, according to the 1,100 email marketers who responded to the survey. And if you look across from left to right, the further right these tactics are, the higher the degree of difficulty. There are things on here that represent what I'm talking about in terms of fast and easy trumping effectiveness. If you look at the tactic, the largest sphere on here, removing inactive subscribers, that is the most used tactic, but it's not quite as effective. It's not as high up on this chart as dedicated IP address, which fewer email marketers tend to use. It's also, dedicated IP address is also the most effective tactic on here. So why aren't more using it? Well, in part, it may be just because some email marketers aren't aware that having a dedicated IP address is so effective. In other respects, having a dedicated IP address may be a limitation of a marketer's email service provider. So in some cases, someone using a less sophisticated email marketing solution may not have the ability to have a dedicated IP address. They may be limited to the IP addresses available through the email service provider. So there are a number of reasons for the positioning of each one of these tactics on here, but all in all, when you look at this, what you do find is that we often opt for the easier tactics over the most effective, and one way to increase and improve the deliverability of your email campaigns is to start focusing more on what's effective rather than what is easy to implement. I'd like to hand it over now to Tom Sather from ReturnPath, who's going to talk to you about getting started in improving email deliverability. Tom?
Thanks, Sergio. That was great information. Yeah, so before your messages can even reach your subscribers, you need to have good deliverability. The messages need to reach the inbox. So let's kind of rewind a bit and talk about deliverability, define the things that go into your reputation, and then we'll talk about how those affect your relevancy. So, we talk a lot about delivered rate. I'd like to kind of focus the conversation more on your inbox placement rate. So you need to know what's your inbox placement rate. It's actually different than your actual delivered rate. Your inbox placement rate is percentages of emails that actually make it to your subscribers' inboxes. So, a lot of marketers think they know how well they're doing just because of their delivered rate. So often your delivered rate is actually your bounce rate. So your sent messages minus the bounce messages actually doesn't equal delivered. So you need to know the additional inbox placement rate to truly know how your email program is doing. So not knowing your inbox placement rate is one of the main reasons why your email has problems reaching its rightful place in the marketing mix. You send the mail out, just not certain that the mail is actually going to get there. It could land into the spam folder, or it just could be missing, just like your bounce reports show. So uncertainty of inbox placement is actually a very real economic problem for both B2B and B2C marketers. So non-delivery rates here in this chart that we have, this is based on a study that ReturnPath did for global delivery rates. You can see that it started to level off at about 20%, so meaning that the messages that reach the junk folder as well as those that go missing. So that directly affects email ROI. The bottom line is that you'll lose revenue and the email channel will become a less effective tool for you. You'll start to see your mail delivered to either to the bulk or junk or spam folder. Most senders find it then extremely difficult to make it back to the inbox after this happens, since now you're actually competing with all the other people in the spam folder to get out of there. So if you don't take steps to solve your problem, you'll later experience blocks at ISPs or increased throttling or just greater scrutiny on the amount of email that an ISP or email receiver will allow from you. This means that a greater portion of your file will never see your emails. And if they can't see your emails, there's no way that they can tell that they're actually going to be relevant towards them. So again, your entire email program and revenue suffers if you don't pay attention to your email deliverability. So why does this happen? So for some marketers, email deliverability is a new concept, but for most, there's a general misconception that once you press the send button, your emails are actually reaching the inbox. But unfortunately, that assumption is flawed, and here's why. ISPs don't tell you what happened to your email. Much like the post office does. They're not going to send you notifications. They're not going to send return receipts to tell you whether your email arrived or if it was returned to the sender. And because there is no intel around whether your email didn't reach its destination, marketers then have no choice but to make the flawed assumption that all of their email reached their subscribers. So given the data found in our own global email deliverability benchmark report last year, we know that email routinely gets undelivered. And also, most marketers, like we've talked about, employ the use of an ESP or an MTA to deploy their email. Marketers who are aware of deliverability either wrongfully assume deliverability is the ESP's problem or that their ESP is taking care of all their issues for them. However, ESPs only control a very small portion of what affects your deliverability, like infrastructure issues, but unfortunately they're unable to provide expert counsel on one-to-one level based on the factors that impact deliverability, such as you control on a day-to-day basis, like your sender reputation as well as the subscriber experience. And also, some ESPs won't even show you the inbox placement rate. So while many reports will show delivered rates, that rate will give the impression that those emails were actually delivered to the inbox, when in fact it's just reflective of the emails that bounced. So we talked about how your deliverability is actually affected by your reputation. So your reputation is a combination of 6 factors included here. So the first one is complaints. So complaints is defined when your subscriber clicks on the report spam or the report junk button within the webmail interface. This is probably the most popular method for ISPs to determine if their users find their messages coming from you, the sender, are actually relevant. The second is list hygiene. So this is determined by how clean your list is. ISPs in particular look at your spam traps as well as your unknown users. So spam traps are addresses that are actually set up by the email providers and ISPs to catch spammers. And unknown users are addresses that either have never existed or they no longer exist. They've been abandoned. Spammers typically have both high spam traps as well as high unknown user rates. So it's very typical then for ISPs to block if you exceed their tolerance levels for both spam traps and unknown users. Also, your sending infrastructure is the only thing that, is the first thing that email providers actually see from you. So you need to make sure that you're set up correctly. If you're using an ESP, chances are you're set up and you don't need to worry about that. But if you are mailing in-house, it's something that you need to pay attention to. Also, make sure that your campaign management software is capable of at least targeting your subscribers so you can be more relevant in your messaging. Sending permanence then is determined by how long you've actually been mailing from an IP address and domain. So it's just the overall sending history of that IP address or domain. And then rendering and message quality are especially important for relevancy because you need to, A, avoid your spam filters, make sure that popular spam folders aren't delivering your mail to the spam folder or blocking your messages. And then also you need to make sure that your messages render correctly within the email client that your subscribers are reading your mail. And then last but not least, we have engagement, which is somewhat relatively new, or at least the rules have changed for engagement filtering. And we see that today, especially with ISPs like Hotmail and Gmail, and then the new kid on the block, which just announced yesterday they're offering email, Facebook. So let's talk a little bit more about engagement filtering, just because I think it's very important to determine how your subscribers are interacting with your mail, and that's a direct correlation with the relevancy of your messages. So like I mentioned, webmail providers are now looking at these engagement metrics as a way to filter email. So they're looking at, are your subscribers actually reading your messages? Are they opening it? Are they moving it from different folders? Or are they replying from your messages? So, for example, messages that are read and deleted, that's actually could count as a positive for you, or maybe a negative. Messages that are deleted without being read, and then also, like I mentioned, messages that are replied to. So those are kind of the main focus of what the ISPs are looking at. Additionally, Gmail released their prioritized inbox, which helps users sort through all their inbox clutter. And they're actually predicting, based on how you interact with the mail, whether to deliver it to the prioritized inbox or not. Hotmail is also doing something very similar. So it's looking at how often or not you read messages from particular senders. And Facebook, as they announced, they're doing something very similar, but they're basing it off of your social network. So who are your friends? Who are your friends of friends? Are you reading your messages? Are you deleting them? Things like that. So now we kind of defined what reputation is, how that affects deliverability. Let's take let's look at 10 tactics here that will directly affect your relevancy. So first of all, like I mentioned, is your inbox placement rate. We define that it's extremely important that you know what your inbox placement rate is and not just your delivered rate. If your mail never gets to your subscribers and you actually promised it to them, then obviously your brand is on the line. It also means that if you have some underlying subscriber perception issues, that could mean that you have an issue with relevancy. So you can kind of think of this as the canary in the mine to determine how your messages are being received from your subscribers. And also there's a lesson here, to all of us from Tiger Woods. A good reputation takes time to build, and then a bad reputation takes no time at all. So in order to achieve a high inbox placement rate, you need to monitor your reputation as well as your inbox placement rate will change with each deployment. Your reputation is important in the mind of the ISP and the consumer. You not only need to know if your email is reaching your subscribers as promised, but also if it's being spoofed or phished. Additionally, having a low reputation is also a warning sign that your emails may not be relevant, much like your inbox placement rate. So pay attention to the main drivers of your reputation that equate into relevancy, such as complaints. For example, if you have a high complaint rate and high unsubscribe rate, it could indicate that your emails are no longer relevant to your audience. So in order to figure out what your inbox placement rate is, you need to get a Seedless monitoring tool. If you don't know what's going on with your mail, then you obviously can't properly talk to your subscribers. And this will allow you to determine what your inbox placement rate is and the steps needed to get back into the inbox from the junk folder or from being blocked from the ISPs. Now, obviously, dead men don't talk. Sergio talked about the tactic of, removing dead addresses from files. It's a very popular tactic by marketers. So let's talk a little bit about that. So dead addresses really come into, two flavors when we're talking about deliverability. So we have one that is dead and not moving, and then we have one that is dead but is moving and eating away at the ROI of your email marketing program. Those are actually the worst, and we can call them email zombies. So these email zombies will never be removed from your file because you can actually deliver to them still. They're never going to bounce out. However, they're never going to open or click through on your emails. They may look like they're alive, but they're not. So when ISPs are actually looking at the number of active subscribers on your file, it's imperative to address these email zombies. Here are a couple of ways that we can actually address those email zombies. So first one is just a win-back campaign. So subscribers who are ignoring your email are soon lost to you. So we need to recapture them, obviously, before it's too late. And we can do that by implementing a win-back campaign. So a lot of marketers ask, so how often should I remind subscribers to stay active? So it really depends on what your messaging type is and the frequency of your mails. But generally, if subscribers are ignoring your emails for a quarter, it's probably time to take action. So win-back strategies are obviously no longer something you need to think of just once a year or more, especially now that engagement level filtering is taking place at the major ISPs. So in order to achieve the best deliverability possible, senders need to implement a strategy to win back those inactive subscribers. So more often than not, your subscribers may soon find that your emails aren't relevant. Instead of unsubscribing and reporting your email as spam, they may just stop opening and reading your emails. They become disconnected from your program, so it's really time to re-engage them. Look at your past campaigns to see which received the highest response rates, as this is probably a very good indicator of what your readers find to be the most relevant messages. So above here I have an example of the Bed Bath & Beyond messages. So they sent a win-back campaign to subscribers who didn't open or click through on an email within the past 3 months. They then used an incentive, and in this case it's a 20% off coupon, to get their subscribers re-engaged and back into the mix. So once we've attempted to re-engage our subscribers, our inactive subscribers, or our zombies, now we need to clean out the ones that are just sitting on our file and not doing anything. So let's go back to Bed Bath & Beyond here and see the steps that they did in order to remove those subscribers. So they actually went a step further here and re-permissioned the subscribers that didn't re-engage with their win-back campaign. So this will proactively trim your list of the dead addresses, which include both spam traps and unknown users, which, like I mentioned before, are the measure of your list quality that ISPs look at. It will also help you remove complainers from your list. So if subscribers aren't finding your messages relevant, they're just deleting it, they may complain after time. So this will be a proactive stance to actually remove those future complainers. Bed Bath & Beyond could have actually gone a step further here and tried to solicit feedback from their subscribers to see why their messages weren't relevant, so they could try to target them better. These non-responders could also be listening on other channels like Twitter or Facebook. So Bed Bath & Beyond could have looked to recapture those non-responders through other social medias, and that's probably good advice for other marketers as well. Just because they're leaving the email channel, they may be listening on another one as well. The seventh step here to manage your deliverability as well as your relevancy of your messages is to manage your frequency. So relevancy and frequency can also harm or even help your deliverability. So if your subscribers are already having a hard time determining if your messages are relevant to them or not, having a high frequency can result in even higher complaints and unsubscribes, which result in having your mail either delivered to the spam folder or worse, blocked altogether. On the other hand, marketers can and have increased frequency if their messages are considered highly relevant and desired, and they can then achieve higher responses and revenue. So the most popular question to that is, so how do I determine what the best frequency is? And the answer is to test. So you really need to test. You need to look at things like we mentioned earlier, like your web analytics data. Look to find out which your subscribers are looking for, test that, and then optimize your campaigns around that data. Now, you need to look and measure your results then by looking at your conversions, your unsubscribed, spam complaints, as well as your deliverability. Then fine-tune your frequency, either up or down, based on the results of that data. Also, keep in mind that subscribers are more tolerant of higher frequencies if they're in the market for your products or services for a specific period of time. So if you take for now, for instance, where we have Christmas coming up, marketers are increasing their frequency, and subscribers are generally more tolerant of a higher frequency as well. So it may actually improve your deliverability because the subscribers may find your messages more relevant at this time. I also recommend to most marketers to perform analysis on their complaint file. So those subscribers that are marking your messages as spam, you can actually receive a copy of that. You can determine who is complaining about your emails. Analyzing your complaint files then can be a treasure trove of information about why your subscribers don't find your messages relevant anymore. If you see that most of your subscribers are complaining on the first message they receive, for example, it's possible that you didn't set expectations appropriately at the point of sign-up. If your subscribers aren't receiving what they thought they signed up for, it's not relevant, and then obviously they'll complain. You should also look at the level of permission granted. So if your subscribers aren't aware that they were even subscribed to your list, they're more likely to complain as well. Other trends I would look out for are specific campaigns that generated higher complaints than normal. This is a warning sign that these messages aren't considered to be relevant or desired by your subscribers. So also what may be relevant to me today may not be tomorrow. So you can see this in your complaint file if complaints increase as subscription ages also increase. And this is an indicator that you may need to adopt a different content strategy for your older subscriptions. So when waiting for the next slide to come up here, it's important to maintain a permanent home, and we consider that sending permanence. So when mailers bump up against delivery problems, many of them decide to change IP addresses in order to resolve the issue. And since reputation data is based on your sending IP address, ditching an IP with a poor reputation can actually seem like a very good idea. So let me fill you in on some of the drawbacks of changing IP addresses and why this method is not advisable to correct problems. So first of all, ISPs identify you by your IP address, and if that IP has no historical data to go off of, then it can't be trusted. So while no reputation can be better than a bad reputation, it's not the same as a good one. Many ISPs and email providers look at IPs without data as suspicious. Why? Because too many spammers actually use this technique and to try to get through. So in fact, we've had some clients here at ReturnPath with good reputations who needed to switch IPs only to see their deliverability drop for a time until they could establish themselves again. The second huge drawback is that switching IPs doesn't help you if you don't plan to correct the issues that decreased your reputation to begin with. We see this happen to email marketers all the time. The new IP is soon tarnished by all the same reputation issues that got them into trouble in the first place, and then deliverability continues to suffer. Some senders then will even change their sending domains to try to bypass issues. So this is bad because if you think of it, subscribers that have already added you to their address book or their trusted sender list have personally whitelisted your brand or your domain. And by changing your domain, you risk your email then being delivered back to the spam folder or to be missing. And your subscribers may not know to go and look for your messages again. And the last step to have good deliverability and good relevancy is to have a solid infrastructure. So infrastructural issues are the easiest problems to fix. So if you're using a top-tier ESP, there's good news here because they generally have this buttoned up. But if you're mailing from an internal system, either a homegrown system or a purchased MTA, then you could be more susceptible to these kind of issues. Things you want to keep in mind are to keep your authentication records up to date for SPF, sender ID, as well as DKIM. SPF is the sender policy framework, and it just basically verifies the message came from an authorized server. Sender ID is a basic variant of SPF, but it's what Microsoft uses to verify the message. And DKIM verifies the sending domain through encryption practices. So here's a couple of other items to consider as well. So like we mentioned, you need to authenticate. This is important for relevancy just because more ISPs now are showing trusted sender icons next to authenticated messages. As subscribers scan their inboxes for relevant messages and senders to read, they're looking at the from address and subject line. And if they don't see that it's authenticated, it could mean no trusted sender icon. And then also ISPs may then flag it with a warning to say that they couldn't determine the sender who it really is. As a result, subscribers may say not relevant, delete it, or report it as spam and move on to the next message. Also, you want to ensure that your infrastructure and campaign management software is capable of personalization, segmentation, as well as dynamic content. Like we saw with Jeff's Isabella case study, personalization was necessary in order to get a lift in their purchase confirmations. And then additionally, with infrastructure, Sergio had talked about an effective method that was easiest to use, most people weren't, which was using a dedicated IP address. Dedicated IP addresses can fall into a couple of categories. So one, if you're using a shared IP, so if you are using an IP address that is shared by multiple senders, you probably want to look at using a dedicated IP. Your deliverability is only as strong as your weakest sender on that shared IP. So, move off of it and focus on your own sending reputation. Additionally, I would even recommend having dedicated IPs for each of your marketing streams. So, for example, your marketing messages as well as your transactional messages. Typically, marketing messages have higher complaint rates and an overall lower reputation than your transactional messages, which may then affect the deliverability of your transactional messages. Try to send like with like and have dedicated IPs for each of your different message streams. So here are a couple of resources for you. First one here, if you want to get your free Sender Score report, go to senderscore.org. It's basically like a credit score for your email program. Additionally, join Club Inbox at clubinbox.com. It's a community of like-minded email marketers who want to specifically tie deliverability to relevancy and ultimately more email ROI. And also, you can contact ReturnPath at this link at returnpath.net/deliveredwhere. We've been in business for over 10 years helping retail marketers just like you get emails delivered to their subscribers every day by following best practices that help ISPs identify them as a great mailer. You can go there and also sign up to request a free email evaluation.
All right, we appreciate that, Tom. Thank you very much. We also want to remind all the attendees webinar today that the 2011 Email Marketing Benchmark Report is now available, and so you can get that as a special discounted rate courtesy of ReturnPath. And you can use the link below, and also just as an announcement, the email summit is just around the corner, and we do have the agenda that will be released tomorrow for that, so please make sure and check back on the site. Also, the 2010 6th Annual Email Awards you can participate in. There's no entry fee, and you can go to marketingsherpa.com for more details. So now we'd like to spend the remaining 10 minutes that we do have to discuss your Q&A with some of the questions and give you some feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and check here. Our responses look like, Sergio, the first question is directed towards you. Sergio, they asked, in the three-dimensional reference chart, it looked like the segmenting emails based on behavior was used more than the affected triggered emails. Why do you think behavior segmentation is favored?
Well, behavior can often be automatically tracked. It's usually something that just appears in your analytics versus the triggered email program, which triggered email requires some advanced planning and a bit more effort because it is you may have to put together a campaign that includes 4, 5, 6 different emails in your triggered marketing program. So this requires a lot more setup time, a lot more advanced planning, and so you may be less likely to use it simply because you're dealing from day to day with email campaigns that have to go out one-off rather than the triggered email programs that you need to send out. So that might be why it's sometimes hard to tell why people are using it. In terms of degree of difficulty, triggered email campaigns are more difficult and do take more time and effort than do the other?
Okay, appreciate that, Sergio. Actually, we've got so many questions coming in. I'm just going to kind of go around here. Jeff, next, this question's for you. It's about your content on transactional emails. The question is, can you give more examples of transactional emails? It says, I work in customer service.
Customer service, they're on the front lines. There's a few. I mean, they answer a lot of questions and information requests. Sometimes those can be considered transactional emails, as well as responses to complaints or compliments. Again, being on the front lines, they just need to make sure that the additional offers that are going back to them are on target. And then some companies have web chat transcripts. After you had an online conversation with a customer service rep, they'll email it for your history back to you, and those are great opportunities to add offers.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, Tom, we've got quite a few questions for you. The first one, an attendee wants to know, you mentioned that we should monitor our inbox placement rate to determine our deliverability and help measure relevancy. What are some ways I can do that?
Yeah, good question. So there are third parties out there that offer them. Return Path is one of them. We have what we call a Seedless. So we have email addresses, dozens of email addresses across most ISPs, not only in North America, but Canada, South America, Europe, in the Asia-Pacific region as well. So if you are a worldwide marketer, you can determine what your inbox placement rate is by using the Return Path suite. Additionally, you could even try to do it in-house if you wanted to. Some senders are successful with that, but it's a huge undertaking, so we recommend probably going with the third party that offers Seedless-based monitoring tools.
Okay, just to follow up with that as well, someone wants to know, how do I determine my sender reputation is?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I talked about Sender Score. If you go to senderscore.org, you can get a report there. It's basically, like I mentioned, it's a credit score for your email program, and that's actually a reputation-based tool. How it works is it looks at your sending IP addresses. It determines the volume of your emails, what your complaint rate is across dozens of ISPs. We're actually getting data from most of the major ISPs, as well as some second-tier cable providers and things like that, to determine this. We also take a look at what your unknown user rate is, as well as if you're hitting any spam traps. So really all the drivers of your reputation score. And then we give you a score between 0 and 100, with 100 being the best, 0 being the worst sender. So I encourage you all to go in there. You can either put in your IP address or as well as your domain. If you put in your domain, it will find out what sending IPs we've seen using your domain, and then you can determine what your sending reputation score is for all of those.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Sergio, this question comes from Ron. He says, how do you determine the degree of difficulty?
Hi, Ron. Thanks for the question. Degree of difficulty includes 3 factors. The time it takes to implement a tactic, the effort required. Is it a simple process to implement it, or a complex process that takes a great deal of effort? And the expense. In some cases, a tactic really has no expense involved other than a few minutes of your time. In other cases, you have to depend on a solution that may be a paid solution. So those 3 factors, time, effort, and expense, are used to determine the degree of difficulty in this study.
Okay, thanks, Sergio. Jeff, this question comes from Christina. It says, how would I use the product service recommendations idea to increase hotel room sales? She says, we have a collection of 5 hotels in our company.
Oh, thanks for the question, Christina. I guess first I would look at what you have available for collected data on your customers. Then I would look at what type of offers you may have in your network, whether they be restaurants, shows, or golf packages. And then finally, I'd look at the different type of transactional emails that you may already send, such as a reservation confirmation, a rewards redemption, upgrade notification, or a billing statement. And after you've reviewed all of that, then I would, try to match up the look at the client preferences, match up the offers to the emails so that they go timely. If it's before, during, or after their stay, and then based on your hotel, what your hotel has to offer, and then based on your client's needs, you can really make some effective offers to them. They'll really help them and want them to keep coming to your hotel.
Okay, perfect, Jeff. Hey, Tom, looks like we've got time for one more question. This comes from Bethinato. It says, what are acceptable complaint ratio?
Sure. So an acceptable complaint ratio really depends on the ISP. They all have their own unique complaint ratios, and how they calculate it is also unique per the ISP or email provider, or even the filtering mechanism. So let me explain that in a little bit more detail. So, for example, like at AOL, they have a complaint ratio that's acceptable of less than 0.1%. They calculate that based on the messages delivered to the inbox versus your total messages delivered. So kind of the fallacy when marketers are calculating their complaint rates, they base the complaint rate based out of total mailed messages. And it's actually only based off of the inbox delivered. So then it's really important that you know, again, what your inbox placement rate is so you can more effectively measure what your complaint ratio is. And then at other ISPs, it's very similar, but the complaint ratios can range anywhere from, like I said, for AOL, it's probably the lowest at 0.1%, anywhere up to 1%. So for most marketers, I think you need to really strive to keep your complaint ratio less than 1%.
Okay, great. Well, I just want to thank all our speakers today for sharing their marketing insights and expertise with us. Again, just a reminder, all the slides from today's presentation will be sent to you in a follow-up email tomorrow. Also, the deliverability section will also be sent to you when that becomes available. I'd also like to encourage the attendees today to if you ask us any additional questions, feel free on Twitter or by email, and I'm sure ReturnPath would love to hear from you as well. So, please take a minute today to fill out the short survey after you leave the webinar, and we always value that feedback and appreciate your comments. So, thank you to everyone today, and have a great day.